Okay, I'm going to bring on your last act. He's awesome. He's just the best, so that's why he's last. His name's Harry Jervis. Come on up.
Hello. Thanks for the pressure. Fan club. Yeah, I feel I should probably start with maybe an apology if you were here before. I haven't managed to have any time to write any new material since the last showcase, so there's an apology there. There's also an apology for the front row if you're blinded by my nails, which really answer the question, what happens when you mix alcohol with my curious daddy issues? It's just sort of, I'll try and put my hands in my pockets as much as I can, but again, it's all written on my hands, so I can't really do that. Yeah, when I first decided to do stand-up, I thought I'd talk to my mum, because I didn't know what to talk about, and she obviously has very good ideas, because she's a mum, all mums do. And she said, well, you can always talk a lot about something you're passionate about, so what are you passionate about? I said, I don't know. She said, well, when you were younger, you never used to stop talking about space, so why don't you talk about something like Apollo 13? I said, no, that'll crash and burn. So she said, okay, well, what else were you interested in? I gave it a lot of thought, and I thought, well, when I was in secondary school, I was really interested in history. I didn't do history, I'm lying to you, I wasn't interested in history, but let's just say I was. And I really liked history, and she said, oh great, why don't you talk about a famous historical figure like JFK? I said, I think that'll die in front of a lot of people. What else does she allegedly suggest? Oh yes, she said, maybe you could talk about disobedient dogs. I said, I don't think that'll sit too well with most people. What else? She said, perhaps current affairs. Ebola? I said, I don't know how many people are going to get that. Doesn't get better, I swear. Yeah, and actually she had quite a good idea afterwards. She said, right, well, there's this craze at the moment going around with middle-aged women. I'm always keen to hear a good story about middle-aged women crazes. And she said, do you know Slimming World classes? Well, all these middle-aged women who go to Slimming World classes now go in hot air balloons and do them. She says, why don't you talk about that? I said, I think that'll just go way over people's heads. You're losing him, Harry, you're losing him. Yeah, and then so I thought, well, maybe I could talk about my local area. So I looked everywhere. I looked on Google and I looked on Bing. I didn't look on Bing, no one looked on Bing. And I found a news story from where I live, and it's about there's a man near where I live. And he is a grower, seller and smoker of marijuana. I believe I'm pronouncing it correctly, is that right? And the police heard about this gentleman, yeah, and so they decided they would go and raid his flat, which is on the top floor of the biggest apartment complex in my town. So the police go, they've got dog units, they've got everything going, and they come up the stairs, and obviously they make a bit of noise. And this guy, he's pretty high, like cooped out of his mind, and he hears them coming, and he panics. And bearing in mind he's on the top floor, he doesn't know what to do. And he runs and jumps out of his window. And he falls down many stories, and lands, you'd think he died, but he didn't, because he landed on two women, and they died, cushioning his fall, and he survived. And it's just a classic example of how you can kill two birds with one stone. Bet you're regretting putting me on last now. Other stories about from where I live. I've got a friend who's in a wheelchair. It's not even a dark joke, it's just in a wheelchair. And it's not Arnie either. And she came to me, she's quite worried one day because she's got a new boyfriend and they're looking to move in together. Now, but she's very worried because he's got a bit of a shady past. And she says, well, it's horrible because whenever I'm around his house, if he wants to do some sort of dodgy business, he can just go upstairs because wheelchair, I can't get up, so he can just get away from me. And I don't know what to do about buying this house because I'm scared of what's going to happen. I said, well, why? I was trying to be helpful. I said, oh, why don't you get a bungalow? And she obviously thought it was a good idea because within a few weeks, they're living together in a bungalow. But then a few days later, I get a phone call and she's sobbing down the phone. She says, you'll never guess what's happened. I said, what's happened? Oh, God. She says, he's built not one, not two, but three extra stories on top of the bungalow. I said, oh, no. Well, why can't you just move out? She says, well, I would, but I'm in my wheelchair, and so I can't reach the door handle. He's the only person in the house who can. So I said, why is that a problem? She says, so despite his many flaws, I can't leave without him. Okay. I was out with the same friend a few weeks later, comforting her sort of over a meal, just having a nice chat, and we got into a debate about circles. It was a very one-sided argument. And we were struggling on conversation topics, and we were thinking about, if you think the other ones are bad, these are worse. I wrote these today while I was having my dinner. And we were struggling what to talk about, so we just said, oh, let's talk about weird things that we were taught in school, because, you know, that really common conversation topic. And I said, well, I've got quite a good one, actually. I spent 3 years studying how to lure fat people into places they don't want to be. And she said, really, how'd you do that? And I said, oh, it's a piece of cake. I also, only for 2 years, again, it doesn't matter, only for 2 years this time, studied how to perform major vascular operations on yourself. She said, blimey, was that hard? I said, no, not if your heart's in the right place. And she said, well, that's nothing. We had the weirdest class ever. We had a class which taught imaginary people how to become real. I said, how do you do that? She said, you just have to believe in yourself. That was in Disney Club. I was going for an R there, maybe. Like, it wasn't really a joke, it was more of a sort of message to take home with you. But no, we had this weird conversation, which obviously didn't actually happen. And then the waitress comes over and says, sir, will you be paying for your meal today with cash? And I said, no, I don't have any. She said, check. I said, I just did. So the meal drew on. As you can tell, my friend wishes she could escape, but I've put like the clamp on her wheelchair, so she can't. She just has to listen to my shitty jokes. And so I thought, what do I like to talk about? I wish Mum were here. And I thought, diseases. I quite like disease. I have an interest in diseases, and so I sort of looked on the internet prior to this meal, so I thought I could tell her about some of these really interesting and weird diseases, which you may have heard of, I don't know. A really interesting one I found is fits of coughing and damage to the lungs, which is found mainly in players of large brass instruments. Tuberculosis. Another one is quite a recent, quite a modern disease actually, which causes hair loss in Muslims, alopecia. I know, it's great being bold when the weather's sunny, but when it's cold it's Shiite. And the most tragic one which I found was quite a horrible disease actually, where the sufferer, whenever they see a white object, will get a red felt tip pen and fill it in with red ink immediately. And I just think that cholera is just such a horrible disease. No, I tell you what, I think that is a very good sign for me to end. So I will leave you with my best, most fantastic, and honestly it usually goes down the best, my most fantastic joke on anticlimaxes.